today we are gathered to design a meeting. So that is the function of this session. We are going to work together and starting at the top, working all the way through. Hi, glad you made it. We are going to work to create a new meeting design. There is a worksheet. You should have received the worksheet as part of your registration confirmation, but if you didn't, the link is there. And I will be sharing some slides. The slides have a lot of text on them. I will not be reading all of the text on these slides to you. So if you would like to have a copy of all of the text on these slides, feel free to download those now too. And for those of you who just joined, here are those links again. Hi, Nan. Hi, Rianne. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Bedroom. And there are your links. We are 90 minutes in total. You'll be spending a fair amount of this working together. So if you are here and you don't actually have a meeting that you want to design, you're just kind of curious to see how this is all working, then when we get to the point where we're working together, we're going to ask you to mark yourself with an O so we can make you observers in groups that are actually doing real work together. So you're entirely welcome to stay, but we want the people who are doing real work to get the benefit of having all of the time possible to get that real work done. And I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. So when in doubt, when you walk into a meeting and it hasn't been designed before, you don't know what it's about, use this agenda. Begin by sharing greetings and asking everybody, what do you want to, or what do we need to achieve in this meeting? Whatever they say, go ahead and write that down. After you've heard from everyone in the room what they need to achieve, what their goals are, then get it done. Figure out how might we best achieve those goals in the times that we have together. And when your time is getting near to ending, that last 5 to 10 minutes, take a moment and confirm your results. What did we decide, and what are our next steps? So anytime you are invited to a meeting that says sync up, team meeting, quick chat, any of these random synonyms for, hey, let's get into a room and see what happens, where nobody is quite clear on what's going on, use this agenda. And we'll explain why this is a great solid start in a minute, but we are going to start ourselves with this agenda. So right now, Julie is going to put us into groups of about 3. And in your groups, you're going to introduce yourselves. You have the fastest breakout on the planet. And in this breakout, you're going to share your name, where you're joining from today, and what do you hope to achieve in this meeting. So, Julie, as people are coming in and we're getting everybody ready, are we about ready to go? And any questions about what you are to share in your breakout?
Good to go.
All right, folks, go make some new friends. 3 minutes, this will be super fast. Welcome back. Okay, I see a couple of O's. And again, as we go forward, if you don't have a meeting that you want to design and you just want to be here to offer insights and perspectives to others, then you can do that. And Nan, I'm going to go ahead and take my screen back, but thanks. All right, so we just did a very, very quick round of introductions. And we did that because as you work on your meeting design, this simple agenda follows the basic underlying structure of every decent meeting. So in every decent meeting, I don't care what meeting you've picked for your design today, there are 3 parts. You will begin by getting the group focused. How can you, as quickly as possible, get everybody talking and get their head into the current game? And simply asking what they want to achieve is one way to do that. Once that's done, once everybody's clear on why they're there and what they want to achieve, then you're well positioned to go ahead and do the work. That's that second part. And then finally, before you leave any meeting, if you want that meeting to have a positive impact on the rest of your day, your business, you want it to have done something of use, you need to confirm those results before you leave. You wrap it up, making sure everybody agrees on the decisions you've made and what's meant to happen next. So in many companies, in most environments, we simply hope that that will happen. But today we're going to design a meeting to make sure that that happens for that particular meeting. And we do this because the way that we meet in most of our companies and our organizations and our team is by default. Our biggest competitor as a company at Lucid Meetings is the status quo. It's the habit. It's the, I show up and while I wanted to do it differently, that's not the way we do things around here, right? So if you want to shift habits, you design a new model that makes the old model obsolete. Or in other words, you design your meetings to create a new default. I'm going to just spend a few minutes explaining why this is so powerful and why you should be taking what we do here today, making it your own and using it as often as possible. So when we create a design like this and we say, when we walk in, we go around the room and we ask these questions or whatever it might be, we are changing the default behavior. And this slide, which I'm see if I can make it a little bigger for you all, is an example of why changing the default behavior is one of the most powerful ways you can intervene in a status quo system to shift habits. Now, this is a chart showing levels of intervention that was developed by public policy workers trying to shift the obesity and public health crisis. And they looked at all of the different things they could do. They could ban cigarettes. They can create new laws. They can create taxes, all the way down to something simple like, do a survey to see how folks are doing and send out nutrition labels. The thing that makes the biggest positive difference in habits is to change the default option. So in the world of public health, it's changing the default from French fries to salad. And in the world of effective meetings, it's changing out how you show up and run that meeting by default, designing the meeting to work differently. And this idea of changing the default is incredibly powerful at multiple levels. Here's another example, perhaps maybe a more famous example. When you get your driver's license, one of the options is whether or not you wish to be an organ donor. So in countries where you have to opt in, say, yes, I am willing to be an organ donor, 15% of citizens are organ donors and 85% are not. Now, in countries where they flipped that and they made the default choice, yes, indeed, I am willing to, yes, I'm going to donate my organs unless I object, unless I opt out, 90% of the citizens are organ donors and only 10% are not. Massive difference in terms of lives saved and opt-in. And beyond this shifting of the default, making a big difference in the result, it also makes a huge difference in how people feel about that result. So when they asked people ethically, what does it mean to be an organ donor? In places where they had an opt-in policy, they saw donating your organs when you die to be the moral equivalent of giving away half of your wealth to charity when you die. It was a huge give. Whereas in countries where that is just the default, that's just the way we do it here, it was the moral equivalent of slightly nicer than letting other people go ahead of you in line. So think about that and think about the French fry and salad example. When your meal comes with a salad, do you feel like you're being particularly ethical and wonderful and sacrificial to go for the salad? Whereas when your meal comes with French fries, how do you feel when you order the salad, right? So in our meetings, what we want to do is change a new default so that we feel, yeah, of course, we're going to hear from everybody when we log in because that's just how we do it here. So as we design our meetings to shift the default, they fit into the scope of our larger design in our organization. At the very, very top, we have our business itself. What is the purpose of our business? Why does it exist? What's our strategy? Within our business, we have our communication architecture. So our meetings are one part of the overall system. The way and method and frequency by which we share information, we direct people's attention, and their intent is a combination of the email and the call meetings and the meetings. Within that, we have our meeting operating system. So the meeting you'll design today is one of many, right? So you have a status meeting, but maybe before that you had a kickoff, and maybe you have a planning session. And then finally, we get down into the meeting itself. And with every successful meeting, we need to start with a few things. We need to start with an understanding of where it fits into that whole flow. So here's an example that if you've been through any of my programs, you've probably seen of what it might look like when you get those meetings designed. This is what we call a meeting flow model. And one that's very, very common to leadership teams. So for example, perhaps once a year they get together and they set their strategy. That would be the strategic planning workshop. And then because they want their strategy to actually turn into action, every day they'll check in to make sure that they are on track and they know where people are and that there are no blocks. That's your daily team huddle or your scrum or your stand up or whatever you call that one. And then once per week, these leadership teams who have designed their way of meeting will get together and they will run a check-in where they make sure, are we making progress on our strategic goals? How are we doing in our numbers? What's getting in our way? And if we are having any trouble making progress, how can we solve those problems now? Now, these teams know that not everything that comes up over the course of a week or a month can be solved within a 90-minute meeting. So they also save time on their calendar every month to make sure that they are making decisions. They have space to weigh their options and look at, big strategic opportunities come up or big problem has come up. Let's make sure we have time to have a really thorough discussion and make the best possible decision. And then finally, because none of our plans survive contact with reality, they also schedule a meeting every quarter to refresh that strategic plan and make sure it stays current with reality. When a leadership team has a meeting flow model like this, when each one of these meetings has a design that says, this is what we will do in this meeting, this is when we'll do it, this is what we get for having done it, that team knows how they will set their strategy, how they will check their progress, when they will make decisions should something need to change, and how they will solve problems together. Every conversation they need to have to run their business as a team has a home. So this is the context in which we want to design our meetings. What are they meant to achieve for our team in that moment, and how does it further our team's progress towards our goals? When we reset that default, what we are doing, that team just knows. They don't have to think about it. We are encouraging automaticity in the meeting process. So automaticity is that basically that autopilot, right? When you go on the highway and you're driving and you make it home every time, even if you're not entirely paying attention to every curve and every driving turn. When we gain the ability to do the right thing in our meetings without having to think about these low-level details, that makes it easier for us to take our very, very precious and limited willpower, the part of us that really needs to do critical thinking and that gets tired and cranky if we use it too much every day, and turn it to the content at hand. What specifically are we tackling today? Automaticity is the result of learning, repetition, and practice. It makes it so that we can automatically do the best thing. So while we are looking at automatically doing the best thing, the very, very first thing to do is to define up front what is the purpose and desired outcomes for your meeting. So I want you to just take a look at your worksheet if you don't have that down already. And I want you to look at the goal or purpose and make sure it's super, super clear. So purpose should be stated as a verb, right? To make this decision, to make sure the plans are up to date, to solve problems with our progress, whatever your verb might be. And then your desired outcomes are nouns. When you are done with your meeting, what will you walk out with? A plan, a set of steps, a decision. At the top of this worksheet, you also have some ideas about when to meet. So when you get to that one, just gonna tackle a question right now. There are two basic ways to define when to meet. One of them is cadence-based. So we run this meeting every Wednesday at 2. And the other way in which you can define when to use a specific meeting design is trigger-based. So for example, if our servers are breached, then we run this action review to make sure, or this problem solving meeting to address that. All right, I'm gonna turn on some music and I want you to spend 2 minutes really getting clear on exactly what the purpose and desired outcomes are for your meetings. And then we're gonna send you into groups to work those and make them even clearer and better. Okay. So now let's go workshop those with your colleagues. In groups of 3, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take turns sharing your meeting definitions, your purpose and your outcomes for the meeting that you are designing. Each of you will take 1 minute to share what you've done. And then you'll have 2 minutes to hear questions, probing ideas, feedback from your peers. And then you'll switch. We'll send you messages in the breakout room, so you'll see when it's time to switch to the next person. When you are hearing the other people's definitions of their meetings, listen. Is it clear to you why that meeting needs to happen? And probe. How obvious is it what success will look like? Let's imagine that meeting was wildly, wonderfully productive and successful. How will it, what will you see? What will people do? What will you hear? Any questions about what you are to share and the next step? All right, you have 10 minutes total and we'll send you some notes in the chat. Welcome back. All right, I would love to hear from a few people. Did anybody find a way to make their desired outcomes and their purpose crisper? What did you hear from somebody that you found useful?
Well, we talked about making taking updates away from my meeting and sending them ahead of time, and then do the strategic stuff in the meeting. If I can get my boss on board, it would be fabulous. So I just got to get him on board to not do the updates during the meeting, and send them ahead of time, and then have them look at that and then come with some questions. But the meeting then we talk about strategic things that we need to talk about because we get so bogged down with the updates.
Awesome. Awesome. So your outcomes then, your outcomes are going to be answers or direction or something for these strategic things, right? Like that you will know you have succeeded when you get that at the end.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Who else had something come up for them in that conversation that they found useful?
I think for me, even though I was an observer, I thought of an example and they gave me some feedback that I was coaching an individual and that the purpose probably needed to be even tighter, because the purpose was to clarify expectations or definition of what collaboration was. And it's an engineer and a physicist. And they're like, no, the physicist is going to need something even tighter than just to say we have to define shared collaboration. And I was like, to me, that already seemed very finite, but probably not, given the audience.
That's a big word, collaboration. That can mean a lot of things, right? So awesome. So there's that getting super explicit, when we are done, we will have a document we can sign, a set of agreements, you know, whatever it might be. Okay, one more. I would love to hear one more. What got crisper for you? I am so patient for volunteers.
I'll share. I'll share. The feedback my group gave me was really around what do we need folks to do or bring for the meeting, and just thinking that through, I think helped get back to clarifying the desired outcomes and also the duration. So.
Nice, right? It's fabulous when you're super clear what you're trying to achieve. Then you can back up from that and go, okay, now I understand how to layer in things to help make sure we come out with that at the end. And oh, do we even have enough time for it? All of that. So let's fill in some more parts of our meeting design. So we've done the purpose and the outcome. So that's the frame, the why, and then what we should have at the end. So we need to connect the dots in the middle. And when it comes time to connect the dots, you know, we have here we've got our meeting and they're part of a thing. And inside the meeting itself, we can layer in all kinds of techniques that help us achieve our goals. And, you know, you'll find these coming from all kinds of places. Robert's Rules of Order or design thinking or liberating structures. There's millions and hundreds and thousands. I mean, there may not be millions, but there are lots and lots and lots and lots of different techniques that you can put into a meeting to help you achieve your goal. There are groups of folks who feel like one set of techniques are superior to others, or that if you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong. Let me share just a quick story about that. I wear for this meeting, I wear my battle axe. Thanks, Dad, for my battle axe necklace, because it's a great example of how the technique changes based on your context and your situation at hand. So in ancient times, back in the Scandinavian countries, they would hold a meeting called The Thing. It was literally called The Thing. And all of the clans would come together, and whoever was leading, the chieftain or whoever was presiding that day, had a battle axe that they used to help enforce meeting discipline. The battle axe is the precursor to the modern day gavel, which is what they use in board meetings and courtrooms. The purpose of those meetings: bring people together, adjudicate our disputes, and make sure we have clear decisions about how we're going to move forward, hasn't changed. The technique has. So don't get too attached to the specific technique. These are tools, be able to use them how you want. And in terms of techniques, I think it's really useful to start with the end in mind. So given the clear outcomes that you've just defined, how will you end your meeting? Here are some options. You can absolutely spend a couple of minutes confirming your results. What are our work outcomes? What are our human relation outcomes? You know, literally speak it out loud and make sure you have it in writing. Appreciations are a wonderful way to end meetings. Go around and say, you know, hey, I want to recognize everyone who volunteered a contribution during this plenary session that really helped us all learn together. Thank you so much. A checkout. If you've started your meeting asking a question, for example, how are you showing up today? Or what's the weather in your work been like for the past week? You can end your meeting checking out with the counterpart. Okay, now how are you showing up? Now how are you leaving? What are you taking away today? And finally, ratings are feedback. If part of your success measure is that the meeting itself is something that people felt good about, ask, you know, what did you like in this meeting and what should we do differently going forward? And with that, let me give you 1 minute to design your meeting closing. Okay. So as we move forward, we're going to work through the rest of the meeting in exactly the same way. I'm going to share some examples. You're going to work on your worksheet and fill in your meeting design. And then when we finish your meeting design, I'm going to send you back into your groups for a longer peer session where you get to share everything that you've designed with your colleagues. So we've talked about the purpose and the outcomes. We've talked about the ending. How will you know you got those outcomes? Now let's go look at the middle. And if you want to, at any point during this section of our time today, unmute and holler out a question, interrupt me, please do. All right, so the agenda that you fill in basically for the middle of your meeting is the version of your plan that you share with everyone else. Okay, so a lot of people think an agenda is a big list of topics or whatnot. You know, that is why we have so many terrible agendas out there in the wild that are full of a laundry list of things we might talk about that no team ever actually gets all the way through. Instead, what you need to do to be successful is plan out the steps in your meeting, how you will achieve those desired outcomes, and then create an agenda that's just a reflection of the high level plan that you plan to use to run that meeting. So to create an agenda, you need to list the questions or that you're going to answer in the meeting or the topics you'll cover, and then put them in order. For catalyst meetings, so these are meetings that change our work. There are known existing processes you can build on to create your agenda. And I've got several examples in the slides. I'll go through one of them, and then you have the slides as a reference in case you have a meeting like those that you want to look at. And then for every other meeting, it's often useful to start with some short warm-up topics and then give most of the time to your most important topics. So looking at an example for that, back on our leadership team meeting flow model, the key meeting in this whole process is that weekly meeting that the team comes together and they make sure that they're making progress on their goals and they solve problems. And to do that, this make progress on our strategic goals meeting, they have a number of items that they run through fairly quickly. Basically, these status update items where the writing has come in advance and they're just looking, you know, are we on schedule? What were our key victories? Numbers in terms of goals and tracking and scorecard. Are we on track or off track? It's a yes, no question because they're looking at the numbers that were written in advance. And then the vast majority of the time in this meeting is spent on the most important topic. So while there are a number of items before we get to the most important part, they're all very, very, very short. It creates an enormously powerful set of momentum and progress, and you feel like you're really getting through things. It feels very productive. In catalyst meetings, like brainstorming, planning, problem solving, we have a set of sequences that we run through that are pretty standard. So problem solving, we tend to start with what. In all of these, what are we talking about? So in problem solving, it's super useful to start with what is the problem? And then to identify what does our solution need to achieve, be really clear on, you know, while your problem might be global pandemic, that's not the problem that you actually need to solve, right? The problem you need to solve is how is our company going to keep our employees safe today? What are our options? Which options will we try? And then who is going to do what next? Catalyst meetings, all of these meetings where we have to come together and make a decision because something is changing, often follow this what is going on, so what do we need to do about it, now what are we going to do pattern. And if you're dealing with one of those, there are examples in the slides. As you may have noticed as I was going through those examples, I worded each item on that list as a question. This is a master technique that can help you get even more clarity in your meeting plan than you had before, and that makes it more compelling to everybody you send that agenda to in advance. So let's look again at that team meeting. So this weekly leadership team meeting is one way you could name that, and that's how I've named it on the meeting flow. And this is a typical looking agenda. You know, victories, schedule updates, review the numbers. Now watch what happens when I reword this as a series of questions. When I have asked number 4, review the numbers, and I've given it 5 minutes, The only thing that keeps that to 5 minutes is that I set a timer. Because as we're looking at the scorecard, as we're looking at the numbers, we can get into all kinds of rat hole conversations about that. That can go on and on and on and on. However, when I name it as a question, are we hitting our target numbers? That is a yes, no question. And that is all I'm looking for in that agenda item. I am looking for yes, no. If it's no, then we need to have a conversation, in which case it will come down here. What are the top 3 issues blocking us? So as you go through and look at your agenda, consider wording each topic as a question and see how that makes your meeting design that much clearer and that much more powerful. Wording it as a question tells everybody for that agenda item, we know when we're done because we have this answer. So now with that, I want you to take 5 minutes, look at your agenda and see if you can make it awesome. And during this 5 minutes, I'm going to play my awesome music. Also, feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have them. All right. So hopefully you had a chance. That feels like a long time when you're not actually working on a meeting design. But when you are working on a meeting design, 5 minutes is nothing. So hopefully you had a chance to get through it. And if not, that's all right. This is a draft. Now, we've done the ending. Ideally, you have worked through the beginning. And thank you, Louis pointed out that this question technique, the person who popularized this to begin with is Roger Schwartz. He wrote a great article about this particular technique in Harvard Business Review, I want to say in the early 90s. So since then, it's been picked up by the meeting science community and many others as a great way to make it clearer how you can be successful with each item on your agenda. Now, you've got your ending, you've got your middle. How are you going to kick this thing off? The key to success in any meeting is that anybody who is an active participant should contribute in a meaningful way within those first 5 minutes. They're either speaking or they're in the chat or they're showing up and ready to engage. So a great meeting opening clarifies the purpose, desired outcomes, and the plan for your meeting. You'll let everybody know this is why we're here, this is what we want to get at the end, and this is how we'll get there. We share this right up front so that because meetings are team events, they are team sports, everyone else can now play. They can contribute to help you actually achieve that. Get everyone engaged and set the mood. So if you are here for a very, very serious discussion, you get to set that mood in the first 5 minutes. As a leader in a meeting, we have enormous power. We have enormous power to change how people's brains are functioning in that moment. When you show up with a smile, smiles are contagious. When you show up harried, busy, late, frustrated, that's contagious too. So we get to choose actively the question we want to ask and the prompt that will get everyone engaged. Some options. For business meetings, one of the simplest and most effective ways to get everybody engaged is to say, hello, what brings you here today and what do you want to achieve? That's what we did today. It's straightforward. Everybody speaks and they are then committed to achievement. We've used the word achieve to make that part of our vocabulary and part of our agenda for that meeting. Gifts and hooks is another technique. I learned this one from Michael Wilkinson that gives you, in a business context, a similar kind of impact with a little bit more going on. You ask everybody, here's our purpose. What gift do you bring to the group that will help us achieve that? And what do we need to do to hook you, to keep you engaged in this conversation? Everybody gets a chance to share those ideas. You can also ask a random icebreaker question. Now, at teams where they have a weekly team meeting of some kind, often a random icebreaker question is chosen by the person who's going to lead the meeting that week. This is a great opportunity to practice some autonomy and some leadership development skills on your team. So a new person gets to choose the question every week. giving them some control over the direction of the meeting, letting them set the frame in a very low stakes, very low risk kind of way. I use this picture from Zingerman's because that's what they do with their teams. And I saw teams ask questions like, do you think it will snow again before the spring season is over? Or, what would you prefer, to get rid of something or to add something new to your closet, right? So it doesn't matter what the question is, as long as everybody gets the chance to speak, and it helps them bond together. The weather report and the energy meter. So the energy meter is actually one of my favorite icebreaker or go check-in activities. You ask everybody to say, how are you doing today on a scale of 1 to 10, with low being nearly dead, you shouldn't have logged in, to 10, oh, I'm really jazzed, and why? And that particular kind of question, when you ask something like that, allows everybody to choose how much they want to share, right? I can say, I'm a 5, thanks for asking, nothing to report. Or I can say, I'm a 3, my relatives have come down ill and I'm really concerned about my mom and, right? They can say, I'm a 10 because we just landed this awesome new deal and my grant's been signed and I got tenure, or whatever it is. It gives an opening for people to start to become human together in a way that many business meetings don't allow. Speaking of becoming human, permission slips. So Brene Brown and her team work very hard on maintaining authenticity and candor. They want to be vulnerable and real and have the hard conversations. And so when they come into a meeting that they call a rumble, that they know is going to be about a challenging topic and they're going to have to say some things that maybe are not comfortable to say, they begin their meeting by writing themselves permission slips. I give myself permission to take a break and ask for a break in this meeting. I give myself permission to be an introvert, whatever it might be. So depending on what you're trying to achieve and what you want those outcomes to be at the end, how can you best set the mood and get everyone involved in those first 5 minutes? Go ahead and take 1 minute and put your beginning on it. I've got my last piece of funky music for you. Okay, that's that. So now we are through the beginning, the end, the purpose, the outcomes, all of that. If you haven't, it's been an hour. I think this is a great moment to stand up and stretch. And then we're going to send you to share what you've done with your friends. Before we do, any quick questions for me? All right. Same thing as before. This time you have 19 full minutes, so you've got a little bit more time. And I would encourage you to run your session together in this way. Take 1 minute sharing your meeting design with your colleagues. Then colleagues, ask any questions you have. Spend a minute with your questions of curiosity. What was unclear to you? What did you not understand? This is not a moment for gotcha questions like, a question of curiosity might be, can you tell me more about what that means in your company? Whereas a gotcha question would be something like, why are you doing that first, dummy? So let's not do that. And then you'll have 4 full minutes to offer feedback, to dive into ways to make that meeting design even better. At the end of that first 6 minutes, we'll keep you on track with the messages just like we did before. You'll switch partners and work your way through the whole group. Any questions about what is about to happen? Okay. Welcome back, welcome back. So some of you were in nice, tight little groups and got to have a really in-depth conversation. I hope that went successful and well for you. I am looking, now that we have in our last final minutes, we've got 3 things to look at. 1 screen only. Questions, takeaways, and appreciations. That's it. So what are What came up for you in your groups? Any questions that you have that you'd like to ask now with the rest of the group?
So one of the things, we all intellectually get this, and we all intellectually know that we should do. And we talked about this because I'm going to put Dexter on the spot, about those icebreakers and the endings and that relationship piece. And his reaction was like, yeah, I don't do that, kind of, initially. And so then I put him on the spot and asked him, what would it take to get you to do that? And I think that's what I struggle with sometimes with my groups. You get the eye rolls, you get all of that. And so it's like, there's the knowing, but it's getting them on board to be willing to do it.
Awesome.
Elise, I actually asked a question about, I think if I explained to my group, if there was scientific information, research about how this is helpful, that then people would be more willing to participate. Do you happen to know?
Scientific research about that, the first onboarding
The
thing?
icebreakers, yes, and how they're helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So first of all, there is, go ahead and look at Dr. Allen's book, Suddenly Remote. He has a number of studies that he references in there. Small talk is proven to increase meeting effectiveness and outcomes. So their recommendation is that you show up at least 5 minutes early so that you can do small talk before you end up into your zone of productivity, right? So you can start on time with the actual productivity thing. Double benefit there. You've got some of that personal thing is happening that makes us trust one another. We trust those that we understand better. And if you never hear from people about anything except for their numbers report on the agenda, you have no basis by which to trust them as a person, right? And so all you have to make assumptions. These people are showing up, they're not on camera. Why would they not be on camera? Well, I'm assuming it means they don't want me to call on them. I might be totally wrong. It could be something else I could ask, right? So all of these opportunities to actually ask and have the conversation with everybody increases our ability to not make bad assumptions and to work together more effectively. Lots of research on that. The other place in which we have good research about why that first 5 minutes is so important is because, heck, we're busy. You're running from thing to thing to thing. We came to, I'm going to go to this workshop, but maybe I didn't actually prepare, or maybe I'm going to be late, and maybe I'll just come in and maybe it'll be okay. You want to get the best possible thinking in that meeting so you can get to those outcomes, which means you need to take the steps that get people out of their reactive, I'm going to be there, it's going to be fine, whatever, I can't even pay attention to you brain, and get access to their higher cortex, which is where logic and decision-making happen in a way that gives us the better business results. So there are some great scientific things about neurochemically what's going on in our bodies where we need that moment of connection and clarity and presence before we can be effective cognitively. Don't have any for the chat right now, but there are in fact great scientific backings for those. But more importantly, we talked at the beginning about resetting the default, right? When you walk onto the playground field, and Julie and I were just talking about redoing all of that so it's not organ donors, but making it more related to what we do here today. When you walk onto the playground field and you send a random group of kids a ball and a stick and you say, make it go. Well, some of them kind of hang back. Some of them grab the ball. Some of them are bullies. Some of them are ball hogs. Some of them sit on the side and go, yeah, you're not doing it right. Right? You get all of the things that we see in our meetings. When you walk onto a professional sports team that is about to enter and win the championship, they do not find it awkward to come together and give high fives or the prayer or the ritual before they start the game, because they are there with clarity about what their role is, what their goal is, and how they work as a team to achieve that goal. It has reset the default expectation about how to play, and they play to win. Good question. Other questions?
So I have one question. I find when I do icebreaker, so it takes a little longer. So then meeting time is shrink. So either I have to plan meeting little longer if I will add a icebreaker into my meeting. So generally we always think like we have to have shorter meeting. So I struggle in between both. So how should I decide this?
So it depends on the number of people, right? So that you can run an icebreaker. Today we did an icebreaker, and it took 3 minutes because I sent you off to do it together, not with me. We didn't all do it all together. So depending on the number of people you have, you change your conversational modality is what we talk about. So maybe your icebreaker is in chat, in which case everybody can do it instantly at the same time, right? Maybe it's in breakouts. And if your goal is team building, if your goal is in fact big and important and juicy and deep and potentially full of conflict, add more time to your agenda. So we have speaking of time, we have exactly 1 minute left. So let me tell you what you can expect next. And then Julie and I will hang out for at least another 15 minutes for our after party questions and any more takeaways. So going forward, we will I would love your feedback on this one. This is the first time we've run it in this particular way publicly. I run this session in the context of the programs we would do with clients while they're working to develop their whole meeting operating system. And I run it a little differently. So been trying to adapt it for public use, see if it's useful. I would love your feedback on this, really, really would. We will send links with the audio transcript and whatnot soon. And then our next public event is Building an Innovation Culture into Your Meetings with Douglas Ferguson. He's the owner and master facilitator working at Voltage Control. So very big in the design thinking world. So if any of you have to leave on time, thank you so much for experimenting and designing with us. And for those who get the chance to stay, I would love to hear from you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, thank you, thank you.